Did the Cleveland Browns just risk their entire future on a rookie? That's the question echoing across the NFL right now, and for good reason. This isn't just another routine quarterback shuffle or a standard depth chart adjustment before the season opener. No, this feels seismic, because when head coach Kevin Stefanski stood in front of his team and declared Shedeur Sanders the starter, with veteran Joe Flacco as backup and Dylan Gabriel shoved to third string, it wasn't simply a football decision. It was a franchise-defining gamble. A gamble that could either ignite the Browns' long-awaited renaissance or send them spiraling into yet another chapter of dysfunction. Think about what just happened here. Sanders wasn't a first-round pick expected to carry the team from day one. He wasn't even a third-round investment like Gabriel, who spent all offseason preparing as if the job was his to lose. Sanders was a fifth-rounder, a prospect many analysts claimed needed at least a season or two of learning before he could even sniff the field. And yet, after just a few electrifying preseason performances, the Browns didn't just hand him the keys to the offense, they handed him the keys to the entire franchise. In Cleveland, where quarterback controversies are practically a tradition, this move feels different. Bigger, riskier. Inside the locker room, the announcement landed like a thunderclap. Stefanski's words were short, but the impact was enormous. Sanders starts Sunday, Flacco backs up, everyone else prepares accordingly. The room reportedly went silent. Veterans exchanged knowing nods, as if they'd seen this storm building. Rookies stared wide-eyed, realizing they were watching history in the making. And Dylan Gabriel? He sat frozen, unreadable, before slipping out without saying a word. For a team that's lived through decades of quarterback chaos, the Browns might have just set the stage for their most dramatic saga yet. And this isn't only about who takes the first snap against Cincinnati. This decision cracks open a window into something much deeper: how power actually flows inside the Browns organization. Ownership pressure, coaching authority, locker room politics, even marketing potential all collided in this one announcement. The choice to start Sanders signals more than trust in a rookie's arm. It signals a battle of philosophies. Safe development versus bold improvisation, tradition versus spectacle, floor versus ceiling, and the Browns, for better or worse, went all in on ceiling. Now the entire football world is watching. Some see genius, the birth of a new era led by a dynamic, dual-threat quarterback with star power in his bloodline. Others see recklessness, a franchise chasing hype at the expense of stability, throwing a rookie into the fire against one of the NFL's toughest defenses. No matter which side you're on, one thing's certain: this isn't just a Browns story anymore. It's the NFL's most captivating drama, and its opening act begins on Sunday. When Kevin Stefanski walked into that meeting room and made his announcement, it wasn't just about football. It was about identity, power, and the future of the Cleveland Browns. For weeks, speculation swirled about who would line up under center in Week 1. Some believed the safe choice was veteran Joe Flacco, a proven Super Bowl champion who could stabilize the offense until the younger players found their footing. Others argued Dylan Gabriel had quietly outperformed expectations, showing polish, precision, and the kind of reliability coaches dream about. And then there was Shedeur Sanders, the wild card, the rookie sensation. The fifth-rounder who, on paper, wasn't supposed to be in this conversation at all. But when Stefanski uttered those 7 words, Sanders starts Sunday, Flacco backs up, everyone else prepares accordingly. The Browns didn't just choose a quarterback, they chose chaos, they chose risk. They chose the unknown, and in that moment, the air in the room shifted. Reports say silence hung heavy for a few seconds, almost like the entire roster needed time to process what they'd just heard. Then came the ripple effect. Veterans nodded knowingly, as if they understood the bigger picture unfolding. Younger players exchanged glances, stunned by the sudden twist. Coaching assistants scrambled to rewrite practice scripts. And Dylan Gabriel? He didn't clap. He didn't nod. He didn't even speak. He sat motionless, his expression unreadable, before walking out of the room without acknowledging a single teammate. That moment alone spoke volumes. From the outside, this might look like a typical quarterback battle finally reaching its conclusion. But in reality, this was anything but typical. Sanders' promotion was more than a depth chart shuffle. It was the culmination of weeks of internal debates, late-night strategy sessions, and an undeniable surge of momentum behind a rookie who refused to play like one. Sanders' preseason numbers forced the Browns' hand: a completion rate of 76%, 7 touchdown drives, and a knack for creating highlight plays that lit up the fan base. He didn't just execute the offense, he expanded it. He turned broken plays into explosive ones. He brought an energy that felt contagious. By contrast, Gabriel was solid, consistent, and efficient. But he lacked the spark, the wow factor that gets fans out of their seats and teammates believing anything is possible. And in a league where excitement often matters as much as execution, that difference was everything. Make no mistake, this wasn't just Stefanski's decision. Reports suggest ownership and front office voices were heavily involved, some pushing for Sanders' immediate ascension. Locker room leaders reportedly leaned the same way, drawn to Sanders' swagger and playmaking ability. By the time Stefanski made the announcement, it was less a debate and more a confirmation of what many inside the building already knew. The Browns weren't playing it safe. They were swinging for the fences. And that's why this decision was so shocking. Not because Sanders didn't earn it, his play spoke for itself, but because of what it represents. The Browns just tore up the traditional playbook for quarterback development. They gambled their season, their culture, and possibly their coach's career on a rookie who hasn't even taken his first real NFL snap. But the most fascinating part? The story doesn't end there. In fact, this announcement was only the spark that ignited something much bigger. On the surface, the announcement felt sudden, almost impulsive. One moment, Dylan Gabriel looked like he was on track to start Week 1, and the next, Shedeur Sanders was handed the reins. But peel back the curtain, and you'll see this wasn't some spur-of-the-moment gamble. No, it was the calculated result of weeks of mounting pressure, preseason fireworks, and an undeniable shift in momentum that even the coaching staff could no longer ignore. From the first preseason snap, Sanders made his presence impossible to overlook. His accuracy was crisp, his decision-making shockingly calm, and his improvisation turned ordinary plays into game-changing moments. Completing 76% of his passes and generating 7 touchdown drives in limited action, he didn't just play well, he electrified. Each outing brought more buzz, more energy, and more believers inside the building. Teammates fed off his swagger, fans began chanting his name, and analysts started asking the question that once seemed ridiculous. Should Sanders start Week 1? Meanwhile, Dylan Gabriel was doing exactly what was asked of him. He ran the offense cleanly, avoided turnovers, and looked every bit like a steady hand who could guide the Browns through a challenging AFC North schedule. His passer rating hovered above 100, his completion percentage looked solid, and he played mistake-free football. By any normal standard, Gabriel had earned the job, but this wasn't about normal. This was about the wow factor, and Gabriel didn't have it. Insiders say the turning point came after Sanders led back-to-back scoring drives in a preseason matchup, making throws that seasoned quarterbacks struggle with. Ownership representatives reportedly left that game buzzing, while several veterans quietly admitted that the rookie made the offense feel dangerous in a way it hadn't in years. In a franchise haunted by decades of failed quarterback experiments, the temptation to finally roll with a player who felt different was too powerful to resist. But the buildup wasn't purely about stats or highlights, it was about politics. Multiple reports claim ownership had been eyeing Sanders since draft night, intrigued not just by his skill set but also by his marketability. His pedigree as Deion Sanders' son, his massive social media following, his star power, all of it represented more than football. Starting Sanders meant headlines, ticket sales, and national attention. Whether Stefanski wanted to admit it or not, that mattered. And then there was the locker room. Early reports suggested divisions were forming, with some veterans leaning toward Gabriel's steady hand, but as Sanders' preseason highlights piled up, the tide shifted. Leaders like Myles Garrett began emphasizing unity, rallying behind whoever earned the role. Slowly, whoever earned it began to look a lot like Sanders. By the time the closed-door meeting happened, the decision was essentially made. Gabriel had checked every box, but Sanders had lit the fire. The coaching staff knew it, ownership knew it. The locker room felt it, and Stefanski, caught between developmental caution and undeniable momentum, chose the latter. So while the announcement shocked fans, inside the building it was the inevitable conclusion of a build-up weeks in the making. Sanders hadn't just won a competition, he'd reshaped the entire direction of the franchise before the season even began. The moment Kevin Stefanski announced Shedeur Sanders as the starter, the locker room became the real battlefield, not because players openly rebelled or staged some kind of protest, but because beneath the surface, emotions were boiling. A quarterback decision isn't just about who throws the ball, it's about leadership, trust, and identity. And in Cleveland, it meant redefining everything the roster thought it knew. At first, there was silence. Teammates glanced at one another, processing what they'd just heard. A few veterans, guys who had been around long enough to understand how quickly NFL tides turn, simply nodded. They'd seen shocking decisions before. They knew the business. But for others, especially Dylan Gabriel's closest allies, the move felt like betrayal. Gabriel wasn't just a teammate, he was a grinder, a locker room presence, the guy who put in the extra hours. Seeing him passed over after doing everything right didn't sit well. Reports later surfaced that Gabriel left the room without shaking hands or offering a word. That alone sent shockwaves. Teammates noticed. Some felt sympathy, others frustration, but no one missed the message. This decision had fractured the calm that preseason had built. Then there was Sanders himself. By all accounts, he kept his reaction subdued, no fist pumps, no shouts, no "I told you so." Instead, he reportedly offered a simple nod, a handshake to a nearby teammate, and then got back to business. That restraint mattered. It showed respect. It showed awareness. Still, the rookie's quiet demeanor didn't erase the spotlight now blazing over him. Every player in that room knew the entire season's weight had just been strapped onto his shoulders. Behind the scenes, conversations bubbled. Some veterans began rallying around Sanders, drawn to his energy and raw confidence. Others quietly worried the team was moving too fast, chasing excitement over stability. The phrase, "we're risking everything," was reportedly heard more than once in private exchanges. But here's where it gets interesting. Despite the shock, Sanders wasn't stepping into a divided locker room. The Browns have been here before too many times. They've watched quarterback after quarterback walk through those doors, only to collapse under the pressure. Many players were tired of caution, tired of mediocrity, tired of waiting for safe choices to finally work. Sanders represented something fresh, something daring. And for a team that's been stuck in the NFL's middle tier for years, fresh and daring suddenly felt necessary. Still, the underlying tension was impossible to ignore. Would Gabriel supporters stay bought in? Could Sanders prove himself fast enough to silence doubts? And, perhaps most importantly, could Stefanski maintain control of a roster that now felt the shockwaves of a gamble with massive consequences? Inside the locker room, the mood was complicated, a mix of excitement, unease, and the awareness that the Browns' entire identity had just shifted overnight. For better or worse, Sanders wasn't just the starting quarterback. He was now the symbol of everything the team was about to become. For Dylan Gabriel, the announcement wasn't just a professional setback, it was personal. He had spent months preparing for this moment, mastering the playbook, winning respect in practice, and delivering clean, efficient performances in the preseason. By every traditional metric, he had done enough to earn the job. And yet, when the final word came down, it wasn't his name attached to the starting role. It was Shedeur Sanders. Witnesses in the room said Gabriel's reaction spoke louder than words. No argument, no confrontation, just a quiet, motionless stare before he stood up and walked out. No handshake, no congrats, not even eye contact with his teammates. In the high-stakes world of professional football, where optics are everything, that walkout didn't go unnoticed. Players whispered about it, coaches noticed it, reporters caught wind of it. And soon, the narrative began to spiral. Was Gabriel cracking under the pressure? Behind the scenes, insiders revealed that Gabriel kept mostly to himself in the days that followed. Normally, approachable and easygoing, he became distant, showing up early to work but speaking little. Teammates who tried to console him reportedly got short, clipped responses. Some chalked it up to disappointment natural for any competitor, but others sensed something deeper, the beginning of a breaking point. The truth is, Gabriel wasn't just fighting for a job, he was fighting for validation. His entire journey had been about proving doubters wrong, about showing that, despite not being the biggest or flashiest name, he could run an NFL offense with discipline and composure. For that effort to be brushed aside in favor of a rookie with a famous last name stung harder than most fans realized. And then came the media storm. Analysts debated whether Gabriel had been unfairly overlooked. Talk shows dissected his walkout, questioning if it revealed immaturity or if it was simply the raw reaction of a competitor blindsided by politics. Rumors swirled that Gabriel's camp quietly explored trade possibilities, sensing that his future in Cleveland had dimmed the moment Stefanski made the call. For Gabriel, the internal battle was brutal. Does he swallow his pride, back Sanders publicly, and play the good soldier? Or does he let the frustration fester, risking his reputation and standing in the league? Those close to him say this was the darkest stretch of his young career, a period where he wrestled with the harsh reality that in the NFL, fairness doesn't always matter. What made it worse was watching Sanders thrive in the spotlight he once thought would be his. Every practice rep, every highlight, every headline about the rookie sensation was a reminder of the opportunity that slipped through his fingers. Gabriel wasn't just sidelined, he was being overshadowed. This was Gabriel's breaking point. Not a dramatic outburst, but a slow, visible unraveling of a quarterback who had given everything only to be told it wasn't enough. And while he never said it out loud, those who watched closely could see it. The fire in his eyes was shifting, from belief in Cleveland's future to bitterness about his own. Kevin Stefanski's announcement didn't just shake the depth chart, it reshaped the power dynamics inside the Cleveland Browns. What looked on the surface like a coach's bold decision was, in reality, the product of influence battles, quiet conversations behind closed doors, and the undeniable pull of ownership's vision for the franchise. For years, the Browns have been haunted by one storyline: instability at quarterback. Dozens of names cycled through, each hailed as the future, only to flame out. Ownership, tired of being the league's punchline, wanted a fresh identity, something explosive, something marketable, something that would finally erase decades of ridicule. Shedeur Sanders, with his highlight reel play and famous last name, fit the script perfectly. Insiders suggest that Stefanski was never fully in control of the decision. Yes, he had input. Yes, he evaluated practice tape and preseason performance, but pressure reportedly came from above. Ownership saw Sanders not only as a potential on-field star, but also as a ticket to national relevance. His father, Dillon Sanders, is one of the most recognizable figures in sports. Shedeur brought instant headlines, fan intrigue, and jersey sales before even taking a regular season snap. Passing on that opportunity? For ownership, it wasn't an option. That left Stefanski in a precarious position. If he resisted, he risked alienating his bosses. If he agreed, he risked dividing his locker room. Ultimately, he sided with the momentum, or perhaps more accurately, he recognized the futility of fighting it. In doing so, he surrendered a piece of autonomy, signaling that in Cleveland, the balance of power was tilting further toward the front office and away from the coaching staff. The ripple effects were immediate. Players picked up on it. Some veterans reportedly questioned whether decisions were being made based on football or business. Assistant coaches wondered what this meant for their ability to shape the roster. Even Gabriel's supporters framed the move as politics winning over performance. But here's the twist. Not everyone viewed it negatively. Younger players and those excited by Sanders' rise saw it as a sign that the organization was finally embracing boldness. For them, the shift represented progress, a team no longer paralyzed by fear of failure, but willing to risk it all for a chance at greatness. Stefanski, meanwhile, now carried more weight than ever. His job security became directly tied to Sanders' performance. If the rookie thrived, Stefanski would be hailed as the visionary who broke tradition and trusted raw talent. But if Sanders faltered, critics wouldn't just blame the quarterback, they'd target the coach for bending to organizational pressure. This wasn't just a quarterback controversy, it was a redefining moment for the Browns' internal hierarchy. The message was clear. In Cleveland, the quarterback decision was no longer just about the coach's call. It was about ownership's vision, marketability, and the willingness to gamble big. The Browns had chosen their direction, but the real question loomed large. Had they also chosen the beginning of their undoing? The quarterback battle in Cleveland was never just about numbers on a stat sheet. It was about philosophy. It was about two quarterbacks who couldn't have been more different and two visions of what the Browns could become. On one side stood Dylan Gabriel, the steady hand, the calculated decision-maker, the kind of quarterback who rarely made headlines but just as rarely made mistakes. On the other was Shedeur Sanders, the flashy gunslinger with improvisation in his DNA, a player who thrived on chaos and had the swagger to make the impossible look routine. Gabriel's style was built on precision. He thrived on timing routes, quick reads, and taking what the defense gave him. His game was like chess, deliberate, patient, and systematic. Coaches valued him because he executed exactly what was drawn up, rarely freelancing, rarely gambling. To many in the locker room, that was the kind of quarterback who could win ugly games in the freezing AFC North. A player who wouldn't blow teams away, but wouldn't lose them either. Sanders, however, was a storm. He wasn't content to take the safe throw underneath. He extended plays with his legs, shifted protections with his pre-snap reads, and trusted his arm in ways that terrified defenders and thrilled fans. Watching him play felt less like a chess match, and more like poker, risky, unpredictable, but capable of delivering knockout wins. Sanders didn't just run Stefanski's offense, he expanded it, injecting creativity and fearlessness that Cleveland hadn't seen in years. This clash of styles created an identity crisis for the Browns. Were they a team built on stability, defense, and efficiency, the model Gabriel represented? Or were they chasing excitement, explosiveness, and the chance to finally break into the league's spotlight, the identity Sanders embodied? Inside the locker room, those differences mattered. Receivers reportedly leaned toward Sanders, drawn to the deep shots and highlight opportunities his style offered. Running backs and offensive linemen, however, valued Gabriel's structure, which kept plays on schedule and minimized chaos. Even defensive players had opinions. Some wanted Sanders' big play ability to give them scoring cushions, while others preferred Gabriel's methodical approach, which kept the defense off the field longer. The front office leaned toward Sanders for reasons beyond football. His improvisational style was magnetic. It sold tickets. It got fans talking. It made national shows put the Browns in their A-block segments. Gabriel's efficient play might win games, but Sanders' flair won attention, and in today's NFL, attention mattered. The reality was simple. Sanders versus Gabriel wasn't just a quarterback competition. It was two different futures colliding. Pick Gabriel, and the Browns might be steady, disciplined, maybe even playoff-bound. Pick Sanders, and they might soar to greatness or crash spectacularly. By naming Sanders the starter, Stefanski and the organization made their choice. They weren't interested in stability. They weren't interested in safe. They wanted fireworks. They wanted headlines. They wanted a quarterback who could change the trajectory of the franchise overnight. But with those fireworks came risk, and the real test was only just beginning. Shedeur Sanders didn't just win a starting job, he inherited one of the most unforgiving spotlights in professional football. The moment Kevin Stefanski declared him the starter, the countdown to September 7th began not as a football schedule but as a ticking clock of expectations. Every throw he made in practice, every glance caught on camera, every word spoken at the podium, all of it was dissected and magnified. Sanders wasn't just playing quarterback, he was carrying the weight of an entire organization desperate for relevance and a fan base starved for success. Cleveland isn't an easy city for quarterbacks. The ghosts of failures past hang heavy in the air. Names like Tim Couch, Brady Quinn, Brandon Weeden, Johnny Manziel, Baker Mayfield, Deshaun Watson, all once touted as saviors, all now reminders of broken promises. Sanders, barely into his rookie season, had already been anointed the next in line. That history alone transformed his opportunity into a trial by fire. Unlike most rookies, who get time to learn in the shadows, Sanders was shoved into the blinding spotlight. His mistakes wouldn't be footnotes, they would be headlines. The pressure wasn't just external. Inside the building, the stakes were just as suffocating. Veterans expected him to justify the faith placed in him. The offensive line wanted him to trust their protection, rather than abandon plays prematurely. Receivers expected accurate throws on time, not just occasional highlight reel bombs. The defense, which had carried the team through years of offensive inconsistency, needed Sanders to sustain drives and give them rest. In short, there was no room for rookie excuses. From day one, Sanders had to be the guy. And then came the Bengals. His first start wasn't against a bottom-feeder defense, but against a division rival led by Joe Burrow, a quarterback who had already taken Cincinnati to the Super Bowl. Defensive coordinator Lou Anarumo's unit had made life miserable for veteran quarterbacks, let alone rookies. Sanders wasn't easing into the NFL. He was stepping into a battlefield designed to expose inexperience. Analysts called it the cruelest debut imaginable. For Sanders, it was exactly the kind of test that could either validate the Browns' gamble or bury it before the season even began. Meanwhile, Dylan Gabriel's shadow loomed. His calm exit and agents' trade murmurs only added to the narrative. If Sanders faltered, the cries to give Gabriel a chance would be deafening. Every interception, every missed read, every sack risked reopening the controversy. The Browns hadn't just named a starter. They had created a pressure cooker where Sanders' performance determined not only his own future, but the organizational credibility of Stefanski, Andrew Berry, and even ownership. Yet here was the twist. Sanders seemed to welcome it. He stayed late, studied film, asked for defensive playbooks, and worked with receivers until their timing clicked. Where others saw suffocating expectations, Sanders saw fuel. Pressure, to him, wasn't a weight but a challenge, one he appeared determined to meet head-on. The real question wasn't whether Sanders could throw a touchdown or win a game. It was whether he could survive the unrelenting scrutiny, the boiling heat of expectations that destroyed so many before him. For Cleveland, this was more than football. It was survival, identity, and redemption rolled into one. Shedeur Sanders' arrival in Cleveland was never just about his arm strength or improvisational genius. From the moment his name was called on draft night, one shadow loomed larger than any defender he'd face on Sundays: the presence of his father, Deion Coach Prime Sanders. Prime wasn't just an NFL legend, he was a cultural phenomenon, a man who redefined swagger in sports and now redefined college football at Colorado. His influence followed Shedeur into every meeting room, practice field, and media headline. Whether he said anything publicly or not, Prime's presence was always felt. For Cleveland, this created a unique layer of pressure and intrigue. Shedeur wasn't just a rookie quarterback trying to prove himself, he was also the son of one of the most recognizable figures in American sports. Every time Shedeur dropped back, critics weren't just judging the throw, they were measuring whether he lived up to the Prime standard. This was both blessing and curse. On one hand, the association gave him instant credibility, a built-in fan base, and massive marketability. On the other, it fueled narratives that his opportunity came because of his name, not just his play. Inside the Browns facility, whispers circulated long before Stefanski made his announcement. Did ownership pressure the decision because of the Sanders brand? Were the endorsement opportunities, the TV appearances, and the potential celebrity spotlight too valuable to pass up? Dylan Gabriel's camp certainly thought so, privately pointing to Prime favoritism as a factor in Shedeur leapfrogging the depth chart. Whether or not it was true almost didn't matter. The perception was out there, and perception often carried as much weight as reality. But here's the fascinating twist. Shedeur seemed unfazed. Unlike many athletes who buckle under the burden of famous parents, he embraced it. Growing up in the Sanders household meant pressure wasn't new, it was normal. Deion raised his sons in the spotlight, training them to expect criticism, thrive under attention, and carry themselves like stars long before they played under NFL lights. Shedeur, by all accounts, inherited not just his father's competitive edge, but also his comfort with chaos. The noise wasn't a distraction, it was the soundtrack to his development. Meanwhile, Prime's silence was deafening. He didn't blast the Browns publicly or campaign for his son. He let the narrative unfold, knowing his reputation already amplified every headline. Yet even his silence stirred speculation. Would he be in Cleveland for the opener? Would cameras pan to him in the stands, sunglasses on, as his son took the field? If so, that moment would be more than football, it would be a cultural spectacle, elevating the Browns' quarterback controversy into mainstream entertainment. If you enjoyed today's breakdown and want to keep up with all the drama, trades, and behind-the-scenes action in the NFL, then don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps this channel grow and lets us know you love this kind of content. And hey, don't keep it to yourself. Share this video with your friends, your group chats, or anyone who loves football as much as you do. The more the conversation spreads, the better it gets. Most importantly, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel and tap the notification bell. That way, you'll never miss when we drop fresh stories, wild rumors, or breaking updates that the mainstream media won't talk about.